I am Sheila Petre, and I've never been here before, and I'm very glad to be here again, for the first time. I just saw you, and you lost my thought. And Anita, and Conrad, and Lucas, and Obi. I can't think of all your names at once, and all the other people. So, Lynn told me that the objective of this topic is to give readers an insight into a writer's life, to give writers opportunity to identify with the experience of other writers, be an enjoyable topic that introduces questions, ideas, and life philosophies, and finally the features are to include the poet's story and should include read or recited original poetry. Sounded very self-indulgent. But I didn't confirm because I was afraid he would retract it. So I wasn't sure if this is about how I became a poet or why I have remained a poet, come hell or high water. But I'm a poet. My sisters used to say about me that I do things and then I decide afterward a good reason for having done them. Unfortunately, I discovered this is true of most people, which is too bad because I don't like to be like everyone else. But I have 9 reasons why I'm a poet, and for some of them I'm going to tell you my reason and then explain it, and for some I'm going to explain and then give you a reason, but first an introduction. I don't think Lynn said I'm a sister to Kyle, older sister, big sister, whichever fits, and both do, I think. My sisters, I had 3 sisters, 7 brothers, and when we were young, we were deciding what we were going to be when we grew up, and they said, well, I feel like Sheila will probably die a tragic early death. And then they retracted it, because what if I did, you know? And that's one case where you kind of want to be a false prophet. And they said, she's going to be a reclusive letter writer. This is where I came from. I am from Emu and Holstein, Hosta and Pink Coral Bell, from ghosts in the cellar and doll clothes in the well, from chasing the cows in before it was light and canning applesauce into the night, from grandpas and grandmas who chose to stand alone for a faith that my children may call their own, from the thing isn't whether it works or not, the thing is whether it's right. I am from a poet teacher and a rhyming mom, a world book series instead of .com, from cast iron radiator and window fan, a shuttle bus and a maxi van, 7-layer casserole, and Thanksgiving feast. Opinionated West and politician East, from a Native American ashamed of her tan. I am from pick up some postage stamps while you're in town, from a well-stocked library upstairs and down, and halls where the cousins lost their way, from you smell like a muskrat and unloading hay, from an old stone farmhouse by Antietam Creek and eating al fresco any day of the week, from sit down and tell me about your day. I come from sisters 4 and brothers 7 and 14 years of being 11, now in 4 countries, one of them heaven. From welcome hugs and warning glares and books with titles full of bears. From Twilight is Stealing and Someone to Thank, winners at Monopoly and losers at the bank. From This Shed's a Mess, She's About to Croak, I Like Us and We're Just Folk, Sunday School Sunday and Yappy Dog Joke, Banty Rooster and Morning Dove, a place of chaos and safety and love. Instead of dying young, I married my maintenance man, and we have 9 children. This is from about a year ago. So why am I a poet? Many people fed me poems. That top one, watch it coming. I love it. I don't know how the rest goes. It doesn't go much of anywhere because he doesn't ever manage to get his pigtail hanging in front of him. How many of you are familiar with all of those? Three of them. 5 of them. You can't read them all at once. Now, when Kyle was here, he told you all about this is the day that we're late for school. and how we would be cramming around trying to get ready for the school bus, and my mother would be sitting in her chair. She had health issues, and she had rhyme in her blood, and she would sing, "This is the day that we're late for school, this is the," which didn't help much. But Mother's Day tribute, I read them aloud like you'd read the news. Ogden Nash and Egg Your Guest, with Emily Dickinson, Langston Hughes, Robert Frost, and all the rest. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. 10 words, 6 words, just a line. A word that's the haiku, the sonnet, the plain bound verse, a word that's witty, a fragment fine. I pity the people who never knew a mother whom they could read poetry to. I was going to bring along the best loved poems of the American people because that was the poem book that we had at home. We did Thanksgiving gifts for a while, and one of my favorite gifts that I got was, we didn't get new books very often, but I got a brand new copy of poems by Edna St. Vincent Millay. My candle burns at both its ends, it will not last the night. But my foes and my friends, it gives a lovely light. And Emily Dickinson, I'm Nobody, Who Are You? Lucy A. Martin was my 8th grade teacher, and Lester Shoulder was my 10th grade teacher. If anyone of you are writers, you would recognize some of those names. Lester would write science books, but what I remember about him was how he would sit at his desk and he would put a poem in front of him, and he would read it, and then he would just look down at it and just smile at it. And I thought, if only. It just like somebody offered him a slice of blackberry pie or something, or cherry pie, who knows. And I thought, someday I will write a poem that he will look at like that. I wrote a verse or two that my teachers praised, but I didn't write outside of assignment much. I'm very lazy, till I was maybe 15. Here's one that I wrote, and I won't take time to read it. It might be the only time feathered finger jello appeared in that particular combination of words, and so I think that makes it worth being here. So, why am I a poet? I can't help it. My mom said on a scale of 1 to 10, for the poems in Pathway magazines, your poems are 12. You need to send them to Pathway. So I sent them to Pathway, and I remember I was sweeping the floor in the parlor when my mom came through very sadly. She said, "Sheila, it's fat." And the whole pack of poems came back with a form letter rejection slip, which Pathway doesn't do terribly often, I learned later. But it had a little hint, little typewritten, some of these show promise, please try again. So I tried again. Later I sent 2, they sent 1 back, I sent 2, they accepted 1. And still later I sent around 6 of them, and it took 6 months to 2 months, took 6 weeks to 2 months to come back, and it was fat again. But this time they had taken the poems and they had sent them around to all the other editors, and they had all commented on these poems, and the comments came back so interesting that he sent me all the comments. It was extremely flattering. I mean, my mom was euphoric. It said something about them not being rotten and stiffish, and it was the first I had any idea that publishers made fun of other publishers. And another one said, when the words go tinkle tinkle over my tea-lighted tongue, how can I be held responsible to tell if worth is there or fun? And editors will write poetry like that. It's easy to get in. At some point, they had a poetry contest, and I won 2nd place with a poem about fireflies. I think that's the next one. And I'm not going to take time to read this either, but y'all can read it if you want. And this would be as good a time as any to say that, I don't know, I need to find my helpless housewife voice. I said, how do you do a PowerPoint? And Michael said, figure it out yourself. So I figured it out myself, and I was halfway through, and I discovered transitions. And then I discovered animations. And then I asked my children if they wanted to see what I could do. And they said, let's do that one again. Anyway, here's the next one. This poem actually won second place in the contest that Pathway Publishers gave, which I was 17 at the time. And then they did you were all supposed to send in a profile of yourself. And I wrote in that I was 17, and you were supposed to write whether you're single or married. And I said, I wrote single, of course. And Lester Shoulder came up to my sister, older sister, in the halls of Paradise School later and said, I understand you're single, of course. She was very embarrassed. I mean, she was also single, but... This was a poem that Pathway published when I was 17, obviously. Oh, you may call me a little girl. See that sled come in? For a while I had it come in and twirl like this. And I said to a friend, I said, I'm a little bit afraid that these transitions and animations are a little bit like fancy fonts. They're only fun for the person that does them. JC's nodding. You can just shut your eyes whenever I'll tell you before I click.
I'll be fine.
Okay. Oh, you may call me little girl, and you may say it's childish. I took a sled ride with a whirl which ended rather wildish, beneath the song of steel and snow, behind the lilt of laughter. And when I landed far below, my brothers whisked down after. A burst of flying flakes and feet, a funny sort of tumble. If one feels proud to fly so fleet, the landing keeps him humble. This is an illustration of how a poem would change. At this point, if I was writing it, I would put, the landing keeps her humble. Because it's little girl. Why did I try to be proper? Besides, I don't know if boys are humbled by land. So, when I was 18 and a half, I was in a vehicle accident. And my sister was teaching Michael's little brother, Darrell, and coming up with stories about me. I turned 19 in May, he turned 19 in June, and I wrote him this poem. May the God of the ages grant unto you midnights of thunder and dawns of dew. I'll let you read the rest. He liked it. But my sisters, just a week or so later, I was working late at my desk, writing probably a letter, possibly to him. And there was on the wall beside me, we're giving you a midnight of thunder, they said. I don't know if it came from the God of the ages or not. At some point, after we were dating a bit, I gathered the courage to ask him, why me? And he said, well, he was hearing about me from school, and he was also reading my poems in Pathway's papers. Look at that. That was my children's favorite. They said, do it again. Make it slower. So I did it off that side and that side. Anyway, why am I a poet? That's one reason. And it worked. I said, very self-indulgent. Build me a house of steel, thou steel builder, a house of quiet strength, steadfast and real, a house with firm enduring beams. Build me a house of steel, my steel builder, and I shall fill its quiet places with my dreams. He is not building a house there, he's building a swing set for the children. And he does that frequently. You stand at a really high spot, and you, just on one foot, and you weld with two hands. I don't know how he does that. Public speaking is a little bit like, I think it's going to be okay. I like the idea, but it might be like heights, because I thought, no, I'm not scared of heights. And I went with Michael over to the welding shop, and he has these high walls, and he was going to feed a wire through something, and he sent me up a high ladder, and I realized it's not that I'm not afraid of heights, it's that I have never been high. But He is not afraid of heights. I love to give. For years, I wrote letters to my grandma, one a week, or a month, or something. And I promised her I would send her a poem once a week. And that got me writing quite a lot of poems. And when she died of something like Lou Gehrig's disease, something like Lyme disease possibly, we don't know what it was. Basically, she died from her feet up, and she couldn't talk, and she was still totally cognizant. And I had written her this poem. When I consider how the springs of earth may never come to me again, these fragrant weeks, the robins with the nestlings in their beaks, and everywhere the waking sounds of birth. The tug and pull of cool or warmer weather, new vows created and old promises fulfilled, new color on the branches, first song on fledgling feather, no more for me, this chirping season stilled, when I will shut the summer's hum behind, latch the gate on gardens thorned with sorrow, take the path to spring on every morrow. Spring a feeble word for what I know I'll find. I do not mourn these timid springs and do not call it strange that I consider seeing spring's greater more than fair exchange. She is, she died when she was 70, and she put that on her memory card, which was very high honor. More recently, our church has been going through turmoil, and this spring in council meeting, 6 couples were not present. I am no longer taking communion because of doctrinal issues, and I go there anyway and sit in church for communion, sit through communion. This time I felt like I was especially needed there because the back was empty. Most of the people, when they're not taking communion, they simply don't come to church. And I sat in church and I wrote this poem. Here in this place where no one shows, the thoughts inside their Sunday clothes, and everyone in silence keeps the midnight pain for which he weeps, the peace for which she paid so dear, the faithlessness that feeds his fear, the anguish that has brought her low. How could we sing except we know that you are here, Christ, you are here? And I sat there in church, and our church is probably a lot more proper than some of your churches. I thought, will I do this or not? And some of you are poets and you know how this feels, and I hand wrote it out on a paper and I put it in the back. And it was like a little love offering, I guess. After church, it was gone. From 2018 through 2021, we had 2 babies and 4 miscarriages. I wrote this after one of them. His boot on the shovel was firm and matter of fact. The sod lifted away. She leaned and laid a tiny burden, swaddled in cloth, smaller than her palm against the quiet earth. She tucked the swaddle closer lest the dirt touch this fragment of their love. 8 weeks or 9, how long had she known the gift of sheltering their treasure? She stood. This time he was tender. He lowered the dark turf gently. Then he straightened, shovel still, to receive her against his shoulder. She thought she would cry, but the tears fell only in other places before, beneath, and later, and now there was merely wonder. That while the evening stirred the leaves of the peach tree over them, all around them waited arms of marvelous love. Why am I a poet? For the redemption of broken places. Sometimes I have written a poem to show myself how a situation really looks, sort of a zoom in. I have spent, my notes are mixed up. Oh no, I missed this one. Easter morning. He is alive, now we can breathe. Throwing aside the leaden cloth of grief and deep despair, we wept beside the wounded earth. Our friend condemned to hell and death, but lo, he joined us there. This is the one that I've spent way too much of my life being way too angry at people, but sweetly angry. I'm not going to be yelling at you. I'm just going to be, I guess I prefer to keep this thorn which came out of nowhere last September. I tugged it loose when the pain could be borne. If I toss it out, who will understand? The shock that rippled through my hand, how the crippling numbness crept up over from which I will probably never recover. If they see no cause, they might blame the skin that surrounds the place the thorn went in. They will think I chose to hold this scar. But I did not. It came out of nowhere. You remember? I think I will keep it congealed in a jar, a small dark jar away from the sun, to discreetly exhibit to anyone who asks about the flaws they see composing the person who once was me. They will circle it slowly and comprehend why I walk through the world with a damaged hand. Kind of weird, maybe. Everyone is strange in their own way, but not everyone has an excuse. Poets have an excuse. They're expected to act strange and to let their laundry hang out over the weekend. Edna St. Vincent Millay, remember those books? Portrait of the Neighbor Lady. Before she has her floor swept or her dishes done, any day you'll find her sunning in the sun. It's long after midnight, her keys in the lock, and you never see her chimney smoke before 10 o'clock. She digs in her garden with a shovel and a spoon. She weeds her lazy lettuce by the light of the moon. She walks up the walk like a woman in a dream. She forgets she borrowed butter and pays you back cream. Her lawn looks like a meadow, and if she mows the place, she leaves the clover standing and the Queen Anne's lace. I sit beside a girl named Carla in church fairly often, and I will tell her things sometimes. And if I ever say anything past, we just did our peas, or how's it going with the chicken frying there, she'll say, ugh, sounds like Sheila Petre. Believe me, I toned that one down a little bit. This is always one of my favorite poems, and I'm not sure why. Nobody else seems to like it very much. Just my luck that I must live each day of every 7, each hour of every day. Seth only needs to give breath on days he meets me in a dot-to-dotted way. Next to me, my wife knows star-crossed living also, yet she has it good, mostly evenings. What a life. I would have been my dentist if I only could, a day more mere than lunch, and that just semi-annual. No, it can't be right. Besides the basic bunch of scot-free people, which I only know by sight, there are all the billions, which I never saw. Lucky them. They never live at all. I still don't. Do other people feel this way ever? Or is it just me that other people are only, it seems like they're only living when I'm seeing them? And I told my midwife, I said, I feel really spoiled because every time I see you, you're taking care of me. And I don't know if she got it. I ran across that in my studies for my workshop topic. Shel Silverstein, which I think my husband may have banned most of the books from our house. Look at that going. Draw a crazy picture, write a nutty poem, sing a mumble. It's hard to read it when it's jumping GC. Sing a mumble grumble song, whistle through your comb, do a loony goony dance across the kitchen floor, put something silly in the world that ain't been there before. Which hooks up to this next. I have to wait till he stops, okay? To the next reason why I'm a poet, poetry is a bridge to children. I sent this poem to Highlights, Song of the Automatic Garage Door. My heart leaps up when I behold the family arrive. I shriek, I spring into the air, I swallow them alive. And Highlights sent it back. They said, I think it would be a little scary for children. This one was in Leaf magazine once with, is Grace around here? Her gorgeous clothespin, I think, to illustrate it. For days the clothesline waited while the dryer ate our pants. At last my mother stated, let's give the wind a chance. A sun-dried towels tremendous, a breeze beat bedsheet rocks. But we have a small dilemma, the spiders like our socks. I've actually not written a whole lot of children's poems. This one I wrote because I read a story in Highlights magazine in which the climax of the story was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I thought, I would love to write a story or something with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich as the goal. So I was too lazy to write a story, so I just wrote a poem. I am a poet because I like to play. Who guessed it already? Here's one that's pure nonsense, which I wrote just to following the poem along. If you take the tips of 7 Hershey Kisses and the telltale dab of peanut butter from the lips of your 3-year-old daughter after she stole a spoonful of the stuff from the jar in the pantry, and you whip it all with the tangerine laughter into a bold meringue, and you serve it to the neighbor's mare, mixed well with wheat from Montana, just after the morning glories fold into curly hues of surrender beneath a skeptical sun on a Thursday noon in early June, and then walk on tiptoe backward under the shadow of the halter of the innocent neighbor's mare past collapsed magenta glory and back to the kitchen counter where the story was begun, you will still be no surer than I where we are going or why, and just as relieved, or possibly more, that the riddle you embarked on unaware is completed, is ended, is spun. You should try that sometime. It's actually quite fun. It might be a little like transitions, though, just fun for the people that do it. And this I wrote, there are those cows again. I thought you would like to see them. In the garden, the tick, tick, tick. I will give you the background on this poem because I was down at the Writers' Conference in June, and William Hoover shared a conversation he had with G.C. Waldrop on poetry currently, and why people are writing such straightforward poems instead of poems with allusions from other places. So if you will see, I have an allusion from Emily Dickinson here and an allusion from the Bible. I managed 2. Maybe in the next one I will shoot for 3. In the garden, the tick, tick, tick of the sprinkler thinks away the hours. In the house, I hear a fly buzz. If only it were one. Emily, did you use a sweater or keep your windows shut? Do you know the reference? That's very familiar, so I can use it in a poem. That's okay. But even if it's not familiar, I could use it. I heard a fly buzz when I died, Emily said. Which does not mean I'm dying, though the heat lies almost that near. The beans embrace it. I would rather shrug it off, but face it. I have supper to make. Last summer's beans, sauteed in bacon fat with this spring's onions. My garlics and leeks bloom in my own backyard under the tick, 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 tick of the far-sighted sprinkler. I took the K's off after it sat for a couple weeks, and I'm still thinking about that. Whether that's okay. Can you take the K's off like that or not? Now, I can't tell how much time I have left compared to how much. No, I only have one more page, so I have time to tell you this. One of my favorite children's books. Have any of you read this book? Seen this book? The Watcher. You have it? One person, at least. This is the first place I was introduced to the golden shovel form. Are you familiar with the golden shovel? A few are with the golden shovel. Here's the golden shovel. You've read this poem. Most of you are familiar with this poem. So there was a man named Terrence Hayes who was, and this was in 2010. This was very recent. This was younger than me, so that's exciting. He was sharing it with his child, I think, the poem with his child, and wanted to write another poem, and this kept playing in his mind. So this is what he did. Look at the ends of the lines. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. It says all the same things that the other one said, but more adds to the original poem. And I think it's the neatest thing. So this children's book, some days even the ant towers over me, and I cower in a forest of grass, waiting for the fear to lift like fog, so I can be brave, rise up. But the class bully growls my name, and I shiver in my sneakers, feel the wet fill my eyes. Then I remember how Mom told me to roll my fear like a ball and toss it high in the air where you can catch it and fling it to the hills. And when I read this, then I read the ends of the lines. I lift up my eyes to the hills. And each, wish I was some other who, living where stutters aren't treated like spit. Does that place even exist? No, so I switch off my hearing when Grandma says to ask you for help. If you care, maybe you can tell me how come kids tease me into meanness I can't run from. Where does my help come from? It's really, I'll leave it here and y'all can look at it some. It was in a lot better shape when we got it. I taped it up here some before I came because my children actually really liked the poem. And I said, well, I will try that. And my sister-in-law, oops, I forgot. This is the other part of the original Golden Shovel. After he got 1981 done, he scrunched it and did 1991. And it's even has more punch and pack. He split words, a plate of weekdays cooking. We spring from June to June, we sweat to keep from weeping, groomed on a diet of hunger we end too soon. Then back to the poem I had written, The Golden Shovel. My sister-in-law, Gloria, wrote about the quickening, and this, I think, was published in Leaf magazine, where the people that would know at some point. And look at her line, her third to last line, I thought, the bruise and blood of purple love. I have no idea what that means, but I really like it. Sometimes I wonder how the perfect one can see a bruise like this and hold his peace. Still cries his blood, I know. 1,000 echoes of that sacrifice sing purple from a rifted tomb and gild the gloom with love. I think A Golden Shovel is supposed to be related to the original somehow too, generally. And I don't know how they managed to get all their lines like Terrence Hayes. That's a masterpiece. You should look at it, look it up and look at it. It's just all the lines are the same length, and how to get that to happen. This relates to the next point on why I am a poet. It is a way to worship. I worked on this one for a long, long time. The dead lie undisturbed by the crabapple blossoms, by the middle-aged woman with Down syndrome who walks stolidly up the crooked paths between the graves, a dignified distance ahead of her mom. I saw this lady actually quite often, and she still walks in our cemetery there in Mercersburg. And in the vast adjoining town, how many have said of this or that of the various dead, how they would turn in their graves if they knew, which only shows how little is known by the wise among us of what is known under the weight of the yonder stone. Look at that proud fire woman now, swinging her arms as she marches, how nonchalantly she carries about above her softly drooling mouth some parts of perception I still do not know. I don't know why that took me so long to write, but I tried to make her not perfect. She looked a little proud. I don't know if Down syndrome people can be proud. Yeah, she's just like, I'm not going to walk back there with Mom, but she had to get her walk in every day. Once I stood by the little stand right inside our front door and scribbled this on a paper because I was very worried. Nothing will touch us, but that which will heal us of death or of sleep or of darkness too deep to comprehend lightness. Lord, let me know this. I stand here empty, you alone fill. Lord, let me trust you, free fall into you, stop my mouth under your infinite will. Lord, we are broken, and all the love you give me to give to them keeps disappearing down 1,000 little cracks. But as long as you're pouring it in, I will pour it out. Though it disseminate, and all I can see are shaking heads and 1,000 broken backs. Maybe you should have made sure before we started this that the pitcher was whole, the vessel less ridden by cracks. I know your love can heal it all that my own faith lacks. But oh, we are broken, and all your love slips swift through 1,000 cracks. And then there was the time that I sat in church again, and the others took communion around me. He came into his own, and his own had faces. yes, and words to say. These were not nameless masses fogged on history's way. He loved them each by each. He came into his own. He watched the breach widen in their eyes. He saw the grieved surprise, the sense of grave betrayal, and he held his peace. He came into his own, and his own had faces, yes, and in their souls 100 hollow places, which the death that grows from idol worship long had wrought, until they feared their nakedness before his thought. His thought was love, but oh, they could not dream it, so he came into his own, and his own received him not. I think there's something I realized when I went through that experience is I felt betrayed by my whole church, by the doctrines of my church, by everything I had ever been taught. And they felt as though I betrayed them. She looks like all the rest of us. And she switched on us in her brain. I don't know how to look at that. But I think that we could both identify with Christ a little bit. When a spiritual awakening, new birth, whatever happened to me in 2020. Did anything happen to any of you in 2020? Anything significant that just shifted everything? I was in a relationship conflict with some other people. There were 4 of us. One of them, when he gets in a corner, starts throwing rocks. One of them, when they get in a corner, just melts into a little gooey mess. One of them goes silent and heads out of the room. And one of them just starts sliding little knives in. And marshmallows, like barbs in marshmallows. Here, have a marshmallow? And it will hurt like crazy in there. Guess which one was me? The marshmallow one. And I fought those people very nicely. Until one time I was lying in bed and I thought, you know what, Sheila? You can lay it all down. You can lay down your right to be right in the sight of another. And my mind unlocked in about 20 different ways. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, I should make those poems into a book. And I know what I'll do. We'll hand bind them. My mother had given me prompts, poetry prompts. I think that's what the slide that comes next. One December, every day, she sent me a prompt to write a poem. And 2 every Tuesday. I didn't have to do 2 every Tuesday. I could just only do 1, but I'm not gonna just do 1. I did 2 every Tuesday. This was the 12th of December when I had already written about 13 of them, or 14. I know she knows my feelings, how I always opt for ceilings, how I'd rather reach for sky things, cloud or mountaintop or fly things, somewhere far to north of I things. But she does not pause or stop in her tugging me to drop. Dare she break the wall around me by this attempt to ground me? Would she prefer to see me kneeling, somewhere far to south of ceiling? Is she asking me to crumble to an attitude more humble? What weapon next is stored? Perhaps she's merely bored, her imagination bored. At her request, I'm floored. What makes this one fun was Hannah Lehigh illustrated it. Her illustration is coming. See it coming? Isn't that the coolest? That's me. That's littler than I remember ever being, down at the bottom. She illustrated more of them, and we got them printed, and we hand bind them. My children helped. All kinds of fancy ribbons. If you get tired of white, you can do brown. If you get the book home and you say, I don't like this ribbon, or you can change it every year. It's just what you can do if you lay it all down, that unlocks. And another thing I'm excited about currently, Daughters of Promise asked if I would write a little booklet of liturgies for my hometown. And they asked that in June, and they thought I could be finished by the 1st of August. And this topic in the workshop were weighing on my mind, and July was weighing on my mind. My brother drowned the 6th of July, and this year on the 6th of July, 9 years later, I was sitting in the funeral of a 7-year-old boy from our church, the 4th boy in our church that has died in the last 7 years. Liturgy for when my town faces a tragedy. I wrote this for Daughters of Promise, but I wrote it in June before the town faced a tragedy. And the reason I put it in this form is because I sent it to my writer's workshop with the blue and the red. I'm not sure why it showed up these colors, but they helped me. They said, here, you should do it this way and this way. And one in particular said, you know what, you need to show each one of the individuals in the town what they're doing. You know how the grandma slows sweeping her porch, the way this changes the force with which the boys on the basketball court dunk the ball? The postmaster general looks somber, and today through the drive-up window at the bank, I saw a tear splash on a lollipop. You alone know what ache each holds. So stuck that in. This is a shout out for writers' workshops. And then, lovely, last evening? Was it last evening? I think so. Last minute, and I'm cramming for this, and my husband's gone with some of the children, and I opened up my emails, and the first of the art had come in. Isn't that amazing? Thank you for the leaves of the tree which heals the nations and our town. That's Laura Stoltzfus. She's an Amish girl from Pennsylvania. So I think I have another reason for why I am a poet. Because how else would I be here? You got me here. Being a poet got me here. But this is not my final slide. I have one more poem. I have 2 minutes to read this poem. Just one more transition, maybe. This was something that my sister-in-law Claudia said to me. Were the world to be set back into the Stone Age, the children wouldn't mind so much as the adults. And I thought, that needs to go into a poem. Now, she and I both entered another contest, and I didn't even place in it. I think I was a finalist, but I didn't even win second place, so I'm definitely regressing from the time I was 17. I note the way she holds her chin up, even on the page, as noble women do from age through age. Is it possible we all should walk as children run and are, leaning in their spirits for a whisper from afar, hungry for the things which soon our aproned mother brings, resting in the loving hope with which she serves and sings, running for the hands that toss us high and hug us tight, fearing not how long it takes until we get it right. Stone Age or machine age, or this age when rumors swell, we become as children, and this the tale we tell. Every broken heart is held, and all things shall be well. That's it. 44 seconds. Thank you.